now. So we are recording this for educational and promotional purposes. And I just did get a message somebody can't attend from India because of they're having rains there. So,
Okay.
I guess it's weather issues.
Okay. So my name is Bill Filler, and welcome to our quest to build a culture of empathy. As Edwin said, we'll be recording this call for educational and promotional purposes. And so brief introduction of the trainers. And I guess we'll start with our founder there, Edwin Rutch. Edwin? You're muted.
Hi, everyone. I'm Edwin Rutch from the San Francisco Bay Area. And for about 14 years, I've been working quite intensely on the value of empathy. Really, how do we spread a culture of empathy? And so the question is, why are we wanting to be facilitators of empathy circles? And I just find it one of the most effective first step gateway practices for building empathy skills and a culture of empathy. So it's sort of my mission to spread it as widely as possible with the goal of having everyone on the planet, 8 billion people, learn how to do this process. I think it would really just help for general well-being. Yeah, that's
Okay.
me.
So we can all put that on our to-do list. Lou?
Thanks, Bill. So I'm Lou Zweier. I am also in Northern California in the United States. And I've been working with Edwin for about 2.5 years, doing this process, and with Bill teaching these cohorts of trainers. This is our 8th cohort, so it's been really terrific. Yeah, so I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very excited to see all of your faces, and grateful that you are here and interested in learning to facilitate empathy circles so that this practice can move further out into the world. I have seen it have a big impact on people, and so I have a lot of belief in the value of the practice and the soundness of it, and look forward to helping you learn how to guide people in it.
Great, thanks, Lou. Anne?
Hi, I'm Anne Jordan. I'm from southwest of England. I came across empathy circles about a year or so ago while I was in Extinction Rebellion, and was immediately impressed, but didn't get involved for a little while. And then I did, and have been helping with empathy circles in the UK and within Extinction Rebellion Global Support for the past year or so. And I've just always impressed at how valuable it is to participants, the connections that happen during the circle, and how meaningful they can be. So I want to spread them. I'm behind Edwin there.
Great.
Reaching the 8 billion.
Thanks. We need your help, Anne. Dean.
Hi, I'm Dean from Devon in the United Kingdom, which is also in the southwest of England. I took a similar route into this culture of empathy and this cafe facilitation work as Anne. I came across it in XR. I was immediately impressed by the depth of the conversations that were facilitated. So I thought this is a wonderful process. I'd like to get involved in bringing it forward to as many people as possible. I've came across the process about a year ago. I've only recently got involved in the training, so I'm really happy to see all of you here, and I'm happy to know that we're all working together to enable others to feel fully heard.
Thanks, Dean. Ben?
Thanks, Bill. I'm Ben. I'm speaking from Edinburgh, Scotland in the UK. I guess I'm fairly new to empathy circles and also new to the facilitation training. So I guess, how empathy and culture of empathy is kind of an active inquiry for me. I'm a mediator and counsellor, so I suppose my route in was through an interest in how people are together, how people speak together. And I find this practice very beautiful and learning a lot from it. So glad to be here to do more of it.
Thanks, Ben. My name is Bill Filler. I'm a retired special education teacher. I'm here in Northern California, not too far from Lou and Edwin. I've been working with Edwin for about 2.5, 3 years, both in the Zoom rooms and on street actions and things like that in a culture of empathy, and doing this training with Lou and Edwin and everyone. And it's really very valuable and enriching to me. So I appreciate you all for being here as well. We'll continue on. And if you can just give a brief description like we did, kind of like your name, where you are, maybe a little something about why you want to become a facilitator, what drew you in. Keep it to about 30 seconds. And I'll just go around my screen. And Lynette, whether you like it or not, you're first on my screen.
Okay, no problem. I'm Lynette Betch. I'm from a small city in northern Alberta, Canada, Grand Prairie. Okay. And I basically wanted to get interested. Well, I wanted to become a facilitator because we've had some really hard times advocating in the school systems and things like that for some of our children with special needs. And I think in that process, we found that there was a lot of bullying and things going around. They have a Roots of Empathy program up here for the little kids, but they don't have anything for, to carry on throughout creating a culture of empathy and kindness. And so this kind of just twigged that for me, and I really wanted to become involved with it.
Great, Lynette. That actually is a real interest of mine. And if you want to use me as a resource, please feel free.
Thank you.
Sure. Graham, could you introduce yourself?
Around about 10 years ago, I ended up in a rehab unit. And the real reason, and this is all in hindsight, the real reason was that I didn't know anything about my feelings, my emotions. I didn't know how to communicate with other people at that level, and nor did I know how to communicate with myself. And I see that pretty much anybody who ends up in that kind of situation has essentially those problems. So it's a kind of common factor. And I'm here because I want to deepen my skills. And like Lynette, I want to learn to facilitate because there is so much that needs to be done. And I'm not thinking of 8 billion people, but way more than I can cope with in my lifetime. But I must start. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Welcome. Malin.
Hello, I am Malin. I am in Sweden, Stockholm, and I found out about this through XR. And I also founded Animal Rebellion Stockholm in March this year. And actually the Empathy Circle for me is sort of therapeutic. Like I only did the 3 trainings or participated in December, and I already feel a huge shift within me when I listen to others. Like I'm way more relaxed. And of course, this is needed for like other people, but first, this is just this great journey that I'm on. And I kind of share the story of Graham. I started about 5 years ago, like completely changing everything about myself. I'm a veterinarian, so I was very like science squared person, but it's all changing. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Erin.
Hi, Erin Kerwin in Ohio in the US, and I agree with Malin. I have experienced, 3 circles online, and I've noticed, shifts and have benefited personally. And I guess the reason that I connected initially was because I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I felt like I've been really looking for ways to help my patients like connect with each other, with nature and themselves, in enhanced ways. Cause I felt like I wasn't meeting that need. And those were some of the causes of most things, the deep down root causes. And so just excited to maybe have this on board. Really excited about it.
Great. Welcome. Shima or Shema?
Yes, Shema. I'm Shema. I am mostly from Virginia in America, but currently living in northern Iraq for job reasons. And I am an online counselor, and I hope to bring a culture of empathy to the Muslim community. And that's all.
Oh, great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Celine.
Hello, am I?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I live in Southern Oregon, a small city called Ashland. Very white little city. I've been here many, many years. I've been a mediator and an educator. I practice nonviolent communication, and I was part of Cohort 7 and really enjoyed it and want to deepen my understanding and skills. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Welcome, Celine. And again, Sita. That's right.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sita, and it's either Sita or Sita, either one is fine. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and like Aaron, I've participated in 3 empathy circles with one of these groups, and I've really enjoyed it. I found out about empathy circles from a friend who was involved with Extinction Rebellion, and immediately felt drawn to it. I'm interested in it in a number of different levels. Personally, with friends and family. I also work at an acupuncture school, and we've been starting to have some conversations that can be challenging about different issues. And so I'd like to bring this type of conversation to the school if they're interested in doing that, which I think could be really helpful. And I'm also open. I feel like our world badly needs empathy, and I'm interested in seeing how I might bring this forward in other ways too. So thank you.
Thank you. Boris.
Yeah, hello. My name is Boris, or Boris, however you prefer. I'm from Poland, currently in Wrocław. Yeah, I came here mostly because like a year ago, or maybe like 2 years ago, a year ago, I started having some issues with my mental health. I came through some depressive episode, and I still have some problems with anxiety related. Yeah, and I was just basically lost in this world, and I didn't know what I want to do because I was always doing what others told me. And then I found out about Extinction Rebellion. I went on one of the rebellions, and what struck me the most was like the culture of empathy that it was building, and the regenerative culture. I felt it was mind-blowing for me. It was completely changing, and since then everything I'm still learning. I don't know a lot of things, but I just really wanted to, because this is like the first time I'm feeling I can contribute to the world back, and I've got great benefits from empathy circles, and I want to like share it to my community. So that's it. Thank you.
Great. Well, welcome. Good to have you. Rachel?
Hello. Sorry for my disruptive entrance. I have 2 little kids at home. I'm just going to put it out there right away. So if anyone who experiences life with little ones might be able to empathize.
You have wide latitude.
Thank you for that permission. That said, my lens is, yes, a young parent as well. I've taken a parental pause from my day job, teaching And so I teach within our business school at a local college here, leadership, innovation, business management. And that said, as I'm kind of emerging with the possibilities that are unfolding after my maternity leave, my work is taking me more towards the private sector. So I'm really excited about that, because I believe that there is a lot in our system that stems from corporatization, capitalism, et cetera. I'm sure no news to this group. So I think that in order to do the systems change that I want to be a part of, it's exciting for me that I'm starting to kind of land there and be able to do it. Just really quick, I wanted to say, so I'm from Canada, Ontario, and Lynette, just a quick connection in grad school. Your former mayor of Grand Prairie is a really good friend of mine, Bill Given. So hopefully that's a good connection. He's a wonderful guy and very empathic. So I'm sure it's a positive one. But anyways, I'm excited to get to know everyone in this group. Thank you for sharing and being here. It's very inspiring to me.
Great. Well, welcome, Rachel. Good to have you. Sunita?
Hey, hello, everyone. I'm Sunita. I'm from India, but I'm currently in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. This is very new to me. I just attended one circle a few days back, and I was deeply moved by the connection and authenticity. And since I'm a teacher, I would like to learn this skill. First of all, for me to listen. That's what I learned, that I am not good of a listener. So I'd like to develop that skill and share it with my students. I run a wellness club, so I would like to start something like this with my students so that they can be connected, they can feel heard, and just be part of a larger community. I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to see what comes out of this. Thank you so much.
Great to have you here. Okay, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview here. The purpose of this training in the Empathy Circle practice is to create a culture of empathy. Obviously, that's a big job and it's in process. And we're hoping that your creativity contributes to it. Specifically, the learning outcomes we hope you take from this training is, number one, we hope that you understand, become familiar with the goals, values, and the core structure of the Empathy Circle so that you can guide others through the experience, the techniques, the nuts and bolts. Additionally, we hope to deepen your experience of being in an empathy circle. We believe the empathy circle is a dynamic experience of empathy, as changeable and as constant as the ocean. There are processes at work in us during this time that transcend whatever topic we might be talking about, and we hope to give you the space to experience empathy on your own terms in that way. We want to help you become, this is the third, we want to help you become aware of your strengths and weaknesses as a facilitator and to learn to respond to the typical challenges that can arise in an empathy circle. And then fourth, we hope that you leave this training, having established strong bonds with each other and continue to support each other with your training and your growth towards building a culture of empathy. Although this training is short, we view the practice of listening and facilitating as a lifelong practice akin to physical exercise. Okay, and so generally, those are the grand, goals. And then in this course, to break it down a bit, to summarize, in the first session, the goal is to review the Empathy Circle practice, be introduced to some of the core values of a culture of empathy, and to experience the benefits of the practice. The second session will focus on the how-to. You'll do an introduction and begin to facilitate Empathy Circle breakout rooms. In the third session, we'll demonstrate the how-to again, and then we'll also present more challenging circle situations if you feel ready. You can kind of dial up how much difficulty you feel ready for. In the fourth session, we'll get more time to facilitate and discuss the challenges that might arise. And in the fifth optional session, we will discuss the course and give feedback about it. Okay, and now I'm going to take it over, or leave it to Lou and Edwin to talk about something about the values as we go forward. So
thanks, Bill.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. So I just want to say how moved I was listening to each of you introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about why you want to do this. And I just am so filled with gratitude that you are here and wanting to learn about this stuff. So I'm gonna paste a subset or a preliminary set or a partial set of the values of the culture of empathy. Has been said many times already so far. What we're trying to do is create a culture of empathy, and that when you are doing empathy circle practice, you're inviting people into a culture of empathy. And to the degree that you embody a culture of empathy yourself, and when you conduct in your process of conducting the empathy circle, you're teaching people about it in a non-verbal way. But one of the things we have tried to do, by we I mean Bill, me, and the others who are doing this work, is we've tried to come up with a list of what we think the values of a culture of empathy are. And this is a work in progress, so it's not complete. And what I pasted in the chat is a subset of the things that we've talked about. And we don't have a final set yet, and I'm not sure that we ever will come up with a final set. But the values provide a framework and some guidance for you as a facilitator of the kinds of things that you are trying to support by doing the empathy circle. So the empathy circle practice helps people do these things, and the empathy circle becomes deeper or is more empathic actually if people participate in it and they do these things. So if you participate with curiosity, if you participate with openness, meaning that you're open to hearing what others are saying and you're open about yourself, about what's true for you. Honesty, meaning that you say what's true for you, even if it's different than what others in the circle are saying, but you do that. Mutuality, so that's built into the circle. We take the structure of the circle is each person gets a time to speak. And so there is built-in mutuality that happens during the empathy circle. Inclusion, which is that, we reach out, we try to include everyone. It's open to everyone. It's a voluntary and open process to everyone. And equality, meaning that in the empathy circle, we participate just as a human being, not as any role, up or down, like parent or child or boss and employee. So there's a flattening. So the idea is there's a flattening of hierarchy in the circle. So those are some of the values that we've come up with as part of the preparation for this session today. Edwin sent out a link where people could enter 3 values that are most important to them in life. And so, Edwin, do you want to share that? The results of that?
I'll share the screen here with the values that we came up with. So this is just a quick culture of empathy, places. You seeing that?
Yeah, I thought you were going to share the word cloud. Anyway, okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sharing that next. Okay. That's coming up. Places empathy at the center. So Lou mentioned a bunch of values, which you see, and he talked about how they relate to empathy and a culture of empathy. And this is just our cohort 8, our most important values. So these are the values that everyone in this cohort, has put in as 3 of their top values. So you can see honesty, integrity, empathy, care, authenticity, just quite a few different values. So in the breakout circle that we're going to do, the question is going to be, how do your values, one of your values, most important values, relate to empathy and the culture of empathy?
Yeah, and I'll just add that, oops, could you put that back up again? Yeah, just for a second.
You want that back? Okay.
Just want to add that you've probably seen this kind of display before, but in case you haven't, this is called a word cloud. And the bigger the word is, it means the more people entered that word as a value. So the size indicates how important it was to how many, the people in this group that entered the words. So I guess integrity is like the most important thing. It looks to me like that's the biggest one. But mutuality, honesty, empathy, authenticity, compassion, and care, those are also key values that people are talking to, which overlap with some of the things that I put in the chat. It's also true that people use different words for the same thing. So some people think authenticity and honesty are pretty much the same thing. And I think what's important is that we have a shared idea of the meaning and not necessarily the label that we use for that meaning. Okay, so so as Edwin said, the topic of the empathy circles we're going to do today is the values of a culture of empathy, and how do your values relate to the values of a culture of empathy. And so the next thing I'm going to do, we're going to move into breakout rooms and do empathy circle practice for most of the rest of the session today. We will have a debrief after the empathy circles are over. But as Bill mentioned, next week you are going to do an introduction. One of the things you're going to do is practice introducing the empathy circle to people, to others in your group. And so I'm going to introduce the empathy circle right now, even though I know you're familiar with it. Here's one way to introduce it, and everyone does it a little different. So it's very educational to hear different people introduce the circle. So an empathy circle is an opportunity for people, and it's usually done in groups, a small group of 4 or 5 people, but that's kind of the ideal size. And the idea is that everyone in the group gets a chance to speak and be heard to their satisfaction. And the way that happens is someone will take a turn speaking, and usually the turns are timed, and typically it's a 5-minute turn. But sometimes if you don't have a lot of time, or if the circle's larger than 5 people, then the turns might be shorter. But so the speaker speaks for a certain amount of time, and before they start speaking, they select someone else in the circle to reflect back what the speaker is saying. And when the speaker starts their speaking turn, the idea is after they get a couple of ideas out, then they would pause so that the reflector, the person who's reflecting them, can reflect back what they're understanding. And the job of the reflector is to just reflect back what you are hearing the speaker say, what you understand they're trying to get across. And the things that we tend to do in normal conversation, which is ask questions, give advice, agree or disagree, add your own experience. The reflector does not do any of those things. The reflector just reflects back what they understand the speaker is saying. And that may feel weird. In fact, it probably will feel weird because it's not what we normally do. But there's something very interesting that happens when people listen to each other this way. And that's what we want you to experience. That is what the empathy circle is about. So even though it feels weird, stick with it and see what happens. It's like an experiment. When the speaker gets to the end of their turn, the time of their turn, the facilitator will have a timer that goes off. And if you don't hear the timer, then I'll hold up my phone so you can see that the time is up. Finish up what you're saying and get a reflection. And then if you feel heard, you can say, I feel heard. And then what happens is the listener, the reflector, becomes the speaker, and they select someone else in the circle to reflect them back. And so the speaking and reflecting goes around the circle like that till everyone's had a chance to speak. And then if there's more time, it just continues again. And it goes around in circles like that. And the idea is to get 3 or 4 speaking turns in a circle. That's when things really start to get interesting, is on the 3rd and 4th speaking turn. So as a facilitator, you try to make it so that you try to structure it so that you get 3 or 4 turns. As a facilitator, I will keep time and let people know when their time is up. I will also remind the speaker to pause. If they don't pause after an idea or 2 gets out, I'll remind them to pause, because that's also something that's not, we don't normally do as speakers. And so it's hard for people to remember to do that. So I'll remind people to do that. And the other is, if the reflector does something other than just reflecting back what the person, what their understanding of the person has said, if you do some of those other things, which is easy to do, it's easy to forget and to ask questions or to offer advice or something like that, or agree or disagree, then I'll remind you that, you know, your role as the reflector is just to reflect back what you're hearing. Okay, so that's the basics of the circle. Does anyone have any questions before we start? So that's how I normally introduce the circle. Does anyone else have, any other instructors have something they want to add?
No.
Bill? Oh
No, just sounds good.
Thanks, thank you. Sure. Okay then, so does anyone in the class have any questions before we go into our breakout rooms and do our empathy circles for today? No. Okay, great. Well, so look forward to being in circle with you. Edwin, whenever you're ready.
Okay, and I'll just put the topic in there, which is how do your values relate to empathy and a culture of empathy, or whatever is alive for you. So you can always talk about anything that's alive for you today. They're going to have 4 breakout rooms. One will be facilitated by Lou, the other by Bill, the other one by Anne, and then Dean. We had a couple of people not come, so we're going to have 5. So we're just doing 4.
That's actually, you just mentioned an important part of the circle that I left out of the intro, which is that a circle may have a topic, or it might just be whatever's on your mind. But even if a circle has a topic, when it's your turn to be speaker, you can speak about whatever you want. And it's actually important, in order for this circle to stay alive, for you to talk about what's important to you in the moment when it's your turn to speak. So that's an important,
and we'll have 5-minute turns too. We'll have 5-minute turns, and we're going to go for about an hour and 20 minutes. So we'll go to the top of the hour. It's 12 p.m. our time, but it'll be different time for everybody. And we'll have half an hour for a debrief after that. So I'm ready to open them. Are you ready, Lou?
Yeah.
Okay. And one group will stay here. I'm trying just have one group will stay, and the other 3 will go into different rooms. So here we go. Hopefully that works. Okay, I'm with you, Lou.
Okay, I was kind of wondering. I'm not going anywhere. What's happening?
Going anywhere. Yeah, I'm trying this because sometimes when people drop out and then they come back,
yes,
we can only see them if we're in the main room here. So
yeah,
I'm trying this approach out.
Yeah, I agree. Hi, Sita. Hi, Rachel. So glad to have you here. All right, so so I'm also going to do something that I usually do as a facilitator, just as a way of demonstrating what the kinds of things facilitators do, which is that I usually say, so I'm going to be the first listener, just so you can see what a reflection is like. And who would like to be the first speaker? Anyone?
I'll volunteer.
Okay.
Yep, so that's
Thanks,
right.
Rachel. All right. Yeah. So go ahead. I'm going to keep time, and like I said, you'll hear a chime go off when your time's up, or I'll hold up the phone. If, you know, a lot of times in Zoom, it seems like the audio doesn't get through. So I'll hold up my phone if the time as a visual cue.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'd like to riff off of the question proposed, which was how do our values relate to values of empathic culture, I think, or that's my interpretation of empathy. So I had a hard time answering just 3 values. I'm a very values-driven person. I like to live my life through my values.
Yeah, so you had a hard time entering just 3 values when you went to the link that Edwin gave, because you're a very values-driven person, and it sounds like you're very aware of your values and you like living your values.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so a few come to mind, and it wasn't a surprise to me because a lot of my values are around empathic culture and empathic change and creativity through empathy. So my values that I wrote were creativity, curiosity, and care. And I do think that that's a good starting point. So I felt good about narrowing down.
Yeah, so the 3 values that you chose are, and like you said, you have many, so it was really hard to choose, but the 3 that you did choose and you feel good about them are creativity, care, and I'm lost the other one.
Curiosity.
Curiosity, creativity, and care. 3 C's.
Mm-hmm. From Rachel Crane.
Yes. And and you also said you're very aligned. The values, the things you care about most, the values you care about much, are very much aligned with empathy and a culture of empathy. And those things, you're a creative person, and those values are an important part of how you approach the creative process.
Mm-hmm. And I just really appreciate these kinds of opportunities to reflect, because it's a question that I often ask in the classes that I work with, the leadership training that I facilitate, this kind of strategic planning consultation. Like, it's a pretty foundational place for me to go, and it never ceases to amaze me. A lot of people have never thought about their values. And it's I think it's just a really good place to start. And if we can start thinking about values more together, and empathize around values, I just think we would be a lot more connected. Yeah, to ourselves, to what's driving our life, our decisions, our work, all of it. It's just a fabulous place to start.
Yeah, so what I'm getting in this piece is that thinking about values and being aware of your values is something that you do in your work a lot. So you do leadership training and you do work with organizations, and it surprises you that people don't think more about their values, that they're not more aware of that. And so you think that individual people would be happier and the world would be at a better place if people spent more time thinking about their values and how to live their values.
Yep, exactly. And I think I also, while I felt excited that this was the first assignment that we had and that we get to talk about this as a cohort here, I was sad that it was a real reminder that a lot of people don't do this, and perhaps it's the reason why we are disconnected. From purpose, from ourself, from our well-being. And that connection is really what I'm sensing. That's what empathy is this practice of just deep connection, with each other and with the self.
Yeah. So when you went to the link and saw this exercise of putting in your values, you were excited by that, but you were also, it brought up sadness because it reminded you of how often you see that people don't do that they're not connected to their values or living their values, and you think that part of the reason that the empathy, this practice of Empathy Circle is so connecting and so deep is because that's what people are talking about, and that's what gets recognized in the reflections. And so, actually, you didn't say that, but that's what I thought you were saying. Yeah, and that you think there's great potential there for people feeling more connected to themselves and living their lives better, is being more connected to their values.
Thanks,
right?
Lou. I think
right?
that's time. And
Yeah.
I want to comment. I thought I did say that.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that we're quite attuned already,
Okay.
which is wonderful.
Okay.
You're a fabulous listener and I feel heard.
Thank you. I felt myself using a word or a phrase that I know you didn't use. And so I started
It was in
to
my
like,
brain.
whoa,
I
wait a
think,
minute.
No,
Yes.
it was there.
Yeah.
You just sensed
Good.
it.
I'm
You
glad.
brought it
I'm glad.
verbalized.
Okay. So, Sito, would you listen to me? Thanks.
Sorry, I'm having a little trouble unmuting. Okay.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks. So I'm already enjoying this a lot. I resonate a lot with Rachel. I am also a person who is very values driven. And I am also surprised a lot that people are not more connected to like what's most important to them and their values, and kind of acting in alignment with those. I'll stop there.
Okay, yeah. So I'm hearing you say that you resonate a lot with what Rachel talked about, and that you're also a very values-driven person, and you're already really enjoying the conversation that's starting, and that you also have found yourself surprised at how many people don't really have a sense of what their own values are and what's important to them.
Yeah. And I do think that it is a source of deep connection and deep listening when you can listen for the values that someone is expressing in what they're saying and include those as part of the reflection, either explicitly or implicitly. Yeah, I think that makes people really feel seen when you hear not just the words they're saying or kind of the facts, but that you connect it to why it's important to them, which has something to do with their values.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so so I'm hearing you say that you feel like there is a strong sense of connection and empathy when people not only reflect back what you say, what a person says, but also what the implicit values are from what that person has said, and what I'm also seeing is that you feel a lot of passion about this process and about empathy and connection.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting that lately, hearing you say that and just actually taking some time to reflect on this, I'm embarrassed to say that lately I've been kind of annoyed that people aren't more connected to their values. So I used to, most of the time I have compassion for people, but lately, I don't know, lately I've just been annoyed. Like, why can't people, pay more attention to this? And I'm kind of embarrassed by that, by admitting that, but I have been feeling that lately.
Yeah, so so you've been noticing lately that you're feeling annoyed that people aren't connecting more to their values, and it feels a little embarrassing to admit that, but that's what you've been feeling lately, is you're feeling annoyed. Why can't they feel more connected? And I- and yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
And you're willing to take risks to share who you are.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I get actually as reflecting on that annoyance more. I think it's also I'm annoyed because my judgment is they're not living their values, so their actions don't necessarily align with what they would probably say their values are, and so that, yeah, I think that's the source of frustration.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're reflecting on your annoyance, your judgment is that the people who are not reflecting their values or aware of their values are not really living from what their true values are, and so there's like a disconnect for them, and you're thinking, well, maybe that's what the annoyance is that they're not living their truth.
Yeah.
I don't think I said that quite right, but
No, that's right. That's right. I think that is where the annoyance is, and it's a judgment, and I don't know that it's true or not, but it's, I'm just, I'm aware that that's what is going on. What else do I want to say? So I was just thinking about the larger frame of the values of a culture of empathy, and I'll say this last thing, that while I always want to encourage people to be empathic, it's also important to me that the values of culture of empathy not try to coerce anyone to be empathic. So that should not be a value that, like, you have to be empathic or that we coerce people to.
So in closing, you want to say that while you want to encourage people to be empathic, and that's certainly a value that I hear or feel that you have, you also want to give people the space to not be empathic if that's not where they're at. That because that's also part of the culture of empathy, is not enforcing something on somebody else.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for
All right.
hearing me.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, I need a listener. Edwin, will you listen to
Listening.
me? Okay. Yeah. I'm just noticing that I'm feeling a lot of inner responses to both of what Rachel and Lou have talked about, and yeah, so I guess I'll start there. Yeah, one of the things that I think about in terms of people not being connected to their values is, and one of the things I think is so important about this kind of practice is that I don't think we live in a culture that on a wider scale really teaches us to think about our values. I think that there are pockets of society and pockets of places where that does get taught, but I think on a wider scale, it really doesn't.
Okay, so I'm hearing that you don't feel that the culture really teaches about values. There might be pockets of people who kind of look at this, but in general, the culture doesn't.
Yeah. And I mean, when I reflect on that, I don't think that that's entirely true, but I do feel like there's a lot of pressure on people to perform, and in whatever sense that means. For a lot of us, it means that we need to put food on the table and work at our job and do what our bosses say that we need to do, or and in our society. And I think there's just a lot of fear there. We react a lot based out of fear.
So I'm hearing that you feel that people act a lot out of fear, and they just kind of have to perform, and aren't really looking at the deeper values, just performing.
Yeah. And and again, I feel like that's a little bit of a gross generalization, but I do think that that gets in the way of looking at our values. And I'm feeling a little stuck right now, but I think because I am judging what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're feeling a little stuck right now because you were saying it was kind of generalizations. Maybe you're generalizing, and then you're maybe you're feeling stuck because you feel like you're maybe judging what you're saying.
Yeah. I feel like I'm making a judgment about what I'm saying. So I think basically the situation is just a complicated one. Yeah, so I think probably what makes more sense now is to talk about my values that I wrote down. I wrote down kindness, compassion, and integrity. And I feel like those are a part of a culture of empathy in that I think that that's really what we're trying to practice, is just listening to people, being present, and to the best of our ability, not making judgments, but also when we do, being aware of the judgments that we're making and all of that.
Okay, so I'm hearing that you had three values: kindness, compassion. Was it kindness, compassion, and was it
integrity?
Or integrity.
Yeah.
And do you feel that those are part of a culture of empathy? And then there was judgment, is like to just be aware of when you are judging. Like you might judge, but just have an awareness of the judgments.
Yeah. And yeah. I don't know why I'm having some trouble right now, but I'm just noticing a lot of feeling come up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, a lot of feelings coming up, maybe sadness or grief. Maybe.
Yeah. But I'm really glad to be here. I feel like this is really important work, and I think I'm hearing my timer go off, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, you're glad to be here. See it's important work that we're doing. So yeah. Okay, then speak to Rachel. Yeah, so
ready.
Oh, great. Wow. Yeah, just thinking, I've been finding this really interesting, like how do our values relate to empathy, kind of making the pathway, the connection from whatever value, be it, kindness or compassion or integrity, how do each of those values relate to empathy?
So it sounds like you're following a curiosity or an interest in how do values connect with empathy, and what's the pathway?
Yeah, and what does sadness, if Sita is feeling some sadness, how does sadness, relate to empathy? And so, yeah, there's something like a real, this is really important, these connections, and I've got a story I want to tell about that. So.
So it sounds like it's exciting you with these connections, and you have so much that it inspired a story to come to your mind about this.
Yeah. And the story is I went to the Republican, I've told this one to Lou, so he knows it, but I went to the Republican State Convention, years ago here in California. And I went to ask the Republicans what their values were. And I talked to some young, Republicans and asked them what their value was. And they said, protection, we're going to protect ourselves, and protect our home. So it was protection, and my curiosity was, okay, you've got protection, how does that relate to empathy? So
you went to a Republican convention years ago, and with the intent of exploring their values, and you asked the question, what are your values? And the response was protection. So you're wondering how protection relates to empathy.
Yeah, and I just listened to them. I did empathic listening. They're saying, oh, protection, I'm going to protect my house, family, kind of implies, we got guns, we're going to protect ourselves, it's which I can understand, safety was important. And then I connected it. I was looking for the connection to empathy. I said, oh, what you're wanting to do is protect yourself against people who are not empathizing with you, because if people are empathizing with you, they're not going to want to hurt you and rob your house and stuff. And then they said, yeah, I guess empathy is really important. So we were on the same page at that point. So that was like the connection, we had.
Sounds like you're able to forge a connection actually around how, their sense of protection was to have physical protection, like through guns or this kind of thing around their house to protect them from people intruding or whatever. But you were able to connect that to that they were wanting the safety and for people to empathize and maybe respect their space.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I said that, they said, oh, I guess empathy is important. And we had a connection. Then the question became, well, how do we work together to create more empathy in the world? So we were sort of on the same page because we'd kind of come from wherever the value was to the importance of empathy. And I had a great discussion with them, and it was really great.
And I did want to mention that I heard you say that the kind of aha moment for them, for these folks, it sounded like they said, empathy is really important. You're onto something. And then it ended up being more of a collaborative discussion on how do we work together to build this culture of empathy.
And so one of the values I'd put down for me is mutuality. So I see the importance of empathy as mutual empathy. It's like I hear all the time people saying, oh, I empathize in my family or wherever, and nothing comes back. So it's this importance of empathy being mutual, like we're doing here. Like, I get heard, you get heard, we all get heard mutually. And that value of empathy, I think of mutual empathy really kind of starts building that culture.
So one of the values that you'd like to highlight, and that's important for you, is the mutuality, this reciprocating of empathy, because it's all well and good to kind of give empathy to people like, say, in our family, but how do we really foster that mutual empathic dialogue?
Yeah, and get it back too. So
yeah,
we get it too. So it's, yeah. So that's the one part. The other value is creativity. I love that feeling of when ideas sort of collide and there's, it's just this excitement, right? There's this, usually I'm like working hard, like, Sita, I think, was saying, everybody's kind of, you're in a work mode, you're just trying to do all the tasks. And then you get together with people, you sort of hear each other, you kind of connect more deeply. And then this idea, pops up and it feels so fun. There's just this energy and release of energy. It's like, oh, this is great, so I think it's that empathy and creativity is that when we have these dialogues that the differences come together and there's somehow creativity gets something new gets created through the empathic dialogue.
So that was time. I did hear a bell. Okay, so I'll wrap up. That creativity is another value that comes to mind for you, because it's like when there is that reciprocal empathy, there can be this moment where it's almost like a breakthrough and there's creative or generative dialogue or connections being made. And it's like a real, it's almost like physical. It's in your mind, almost
feels
like being
good.
blown. It feels good. I love how you said that. Yeah, great.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, Sita, would you please listen to me? I'm going to ride that wave because, creativity is a great topic. I'd like to talk about that as well as judgment, because it's both of those themes are resonating for me through just different learning that's taking place for me right now.
Great, I'm ready to listen.
Yeah, so go ahead and
Oh, I'm
reflect
sorry.
that.
I'm
if you
sorry.
just
That's okay.
said. That's all right. That's all right. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm so caught up in what you're saying that I was forgetting about my role.
And I was caught up, so I didn't want to keep going because I thought that'd be a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So you're saying that you want to talk about creativity and judgment because those are two things that have been resonating in you recently.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might have said something else. Can't remember the last part.
Yeah, well, just because creativity, I always love to, it's a fun topic for me. I think it's extremely important for systems change, which is, it's why I'm on board with this Empathy Circle, the goal of 8 billion, like I'm right on board. I think it's fabulous. It's systems change. Like this is really powerful work. And it's creative and it's going to take people to like us all to look at our roles and our place within the system and how can we be more creative around fostering well-being for all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so with the creativity piece, that's something that's really important to you in general. And then also just the whole idea of systems change that just takes a lot of creativity and with a systems change, like building more empathy into the world, that I hear you saying that really takes everybody being on board and being creative about it.
Mm-hmm. So how this relates to the business courses that I teach, I'll talk about, Rifkin's empathic civilization, which is the generation or the age of business that we now find ourselves in, where there's a lot of complexity for a lot of different reasons and factors and things that have happened over time. We're living in a very complex society. We have complex needs. And it's only getting more complex. It's increasing in complexity. So therefore, when that happens, we need to be more empathic with each other. And that is actually, as far as the theory goes, the only way that we're going to be creative. So I completely, that theory, that framework really resonates for me. It kind of wraps a nice bow around what we're talking about here and like just helps to, me to understand the need and maybe the applications of all of this work too.
Yeah. So you're talking about, I think you said Rifkin's model of empathy, it's sort of the business model that you've been working on in at school, and you're talking about how it talks about just all the complexity in the world today and how things are just getting more and more complex, and that the only way that we can work with that type of complexity is through empathy. And so I'm hearing you really being enthused about this work too, because it really ties in with the work that you're doing at school around empathy and complexity.
Yeah. And this is the practical application. So even Sita, like I was feeling for you when you had that moment of like stuck is what the word that you use. And you just kind of felt like there's stuff coming up and you might not have been able to pinpoint it at that time. And for me, I just think, like I feel like that many times in the day and through work and right now. And it's just, I move in and out of that stuck place. And it's because I feel there's complexity that we can't actually pinpoint what's happening. It's like a lot of different factors, systemic, inner system, outer system, like a lot that's influencing, and it leads to overwhelm. Yeah.
So I hear you resonating with the feeling of stuckness that I was experiencing, and it's something that you experience on different levels too, both an outer world and inside. And how does one deal with that? It can feel really overwhelming, and because things are very complex and there's just a lot of different layers, both on the inside and the outside.
I didn't talk about the judgment piece, but I'll come around to it again.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. So Lou, would
Yeah.
you listen to me? Okay.
Yes, I'd love to do that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So so I'll just talk about what I find comes up for me with this kind of thing. I really like this work, and I was involved with learning NVC a while ago. And one of the things that I've been really appreciating about the empathy circles is I feel like, you know, it can wind up being, it's very profound, but also the work is very simple. I'll stop there for the moment.
Yeah, so one of the things you love about this practice is how simple it is. And you studied MVC for a while, and I'm guessing that it's more complicated, and that you find this more connecting and simpler to do.
Yeah, I don't know if I find this more connecting, but I do find it simpler. When I've observed people doing NVC, you know, it's beautiful. But I know something that comes up for me is I have a big inner critic, and I think that was what was coming up for me earlier. And so I found that that came up for me a lot with doing the NVC, that I was giving myself a hard time in my ability to do it, which was getting in my way. And so I'm hoping that that's not as much of an issue for me doing the empathy circling.
Yeah, so one of the things that you're aware of is that you have a big inner critic, a voice that criticizes you, and that is a block. When that's active, that's a block for you. And when you were trying to do NVC, that was very active, and made it difficult for you. And you're hoping that in this process, that will be less active for you.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also if it comes up, it's a good practice just to notice it, and it's there, and let it go and move on. So yeah.
And so a strategy that you're using when your inner critic does get activated is just to notice that it's there, and to accept it, and to move forward. And that's your way of trying to deal with it.
Yeah. I also want to say, Edwin, when you were talking earlier about the Republicans that you were speaking with and reflecting on, so how does protection connect with empathy? I love that idea, because it seems like such a great way to connect with people who have a very different maybe outlook from you or from me or whomever. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah, so you were inspired and grateful for Edwin's sharing the story about the young Republicans he spoke to, because it was exciting for you to hear about how he could connect their desire for protection with empathy and make some kind of a bridge. That was, you thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I don't know that I really have that much more to say right now.
Yeah, so you're feeling finished, and you're not sure that you have more to say right now.
Yeah, and I feel like you heard me, so thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
So I'll speak to Edwin.
Listening.
So what do I want to talk about? Well, I'm really enjoying this circle and getting to know Rachel and Sita. Yeah, so I'm grateful for your being here and sharing yourselves. I'll stop there.
Yeah, so you're enjoying the circle and enjoying hearing from, getting to know Sita and Rachel.
Yeah.
And also that they're sharing themselves, because hearing some appreciation for that.
Yeah. And I also have a deep background in NVC, both practicing it and teaching it. And I agree that one of the difficulties in teaching NVC is that it activates people's critics. and actually, you know, it's really important to get a good teacher of NVC, because a lot of, you know, when I was first exposed to it, people seem pretty judgmental, even though it's supposed to be nonviolent communication. They seem to be more using it as a bludgeon than as a way to connect empathically with people. Yeah, and so that is one of the things that I like about this practice, is there's no guidance for speaking. There's only guidance for listening. And I think that's very powerful. It's interesting to see how much that facilitates learning, people's learning.
Yes, I just want to share that you have also done NVC, and there can be a lot of judgment within it, and that it's important to get a good teacher. And you're kind of comparing NVC in this process.
Yeah,
too,
and
in terms of being
yes,
simpler.
and hearing that reflection, I want to be sure I have no criticism of NVC. NVC is great. It's a very powerful tool, and I have used it to my benefit. And the lens of looking at needs, you know, being able to see the humanity in people because of the needs you're sensing, that's fabulous and very much aligned with what we're trying to do here.
Yes, you're not wanting to criticize NVC because you appreciate what it kind of brings with the lens of needs.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was just taking a minute to reflect more on kind of the broader question of the values of culture of empathy. And what came up for me was a little bit more of what I was saying right before we went into the empathy circles, which is about how different words can mean the same thing for different people. I think that's really fun and funny. And so like Sita used kindness, compassion, and integrity, which isn't the three words that I put in, but the three words I put in are very much in alignment with it, which are care, honesty, and what was the third one? I can't remember. But anyway, I would say honesty is the same as integrity for me, or almost the same, and kindness is almost the same as care. And so I just think that's fascinating how, but makes a lot of sense actually, that people use different words for the same thing or very similar things.
Yes, you just find it very interesting how there's different meaning for the same words. People have different meaning for the same words, and sort of comparing it to what Sita was saying, your values and hers, and saying that there's also some real similarities between the two. Even though they're different words, there's an underlying similarity.
Yeah, and I do think actually that that's one of the main sources of conflict or perceived disagreement, is that people use different words for the same thing, or they actually use different strategies for the same things, like safety. Everyone wants safety, but some people want to use guns to create safety, and other people want to use connection and conversation to create safety. So they both value the same thing. They had different ways of getting to it. And so and this process helps to reveal that, I think.
Yeah, so you're seeing that, for example, something like safety, people have different ways of getting there. So using different strategies. There's the strategy of, having your guns for safety, your connection and dialogue for safety, and being able to dialogue about it is how you, I don't remember, like how you get there. How do you, I think something about how you kind of work these things out. I think maybe you're.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was really saying, really listening to each other. The way you bridge those gaps is by really listening to each other and trying to listen for the needs that people are expressing.
So the way to bridge the gap is to of these different understandings is to listen to each other, and that sort of bridges our understanding.
Right, listening for the meaning. Right?
For the meaning, trying to get to the underlying meaning of what people are meaning. Yes. And then having a discussion kind of brings us to those meanings.
Thank you. I feel heard.
Okay, thanks. So Sita, can I speak to you? Yeah. So yeah, I guess it was about NVC. both, this is both has the same roots, what we're doing here with NVC. Marshall Rosenberg was a graduate student with Carl Rogers. So we're just building on Rogers' active listening, empathic listening. He would do it listening, one person, just the therapist listening to the client. And, and so what we're doing here is just mutual listening. There's no client, there's minimal facilitation, you don't even need a facilitator if everybody knows the practice. So it's very much the same active listening roots.
Yeah. So you're saying that that NVC and empathy circles really come very much from the same roots of Carl Rogers' work, and whereas Carl Rogers as a therapist would listen to people and reflect back empathically in his work, this is more mutual, that both people have a chance to speak and be heard.
And NVC, I think doing an empathy circle is the first step for learning NVC. I don't even like the term NVC. I hate the term NVC. I wish it was called like empathic communication or something like that. But I think that more resonates with the essence. But because it's the same, it's really, NVC is pretty much based on empathic listening, and I think. Yeah.
So you're talking about how NVC is based on empathic listening, and how you really don't like the term NVC. You would prefer it to be something like empathic communication.
Yeah.
And that really the root between empathy circling and nonviolent communication is basically empathy. So it's very similar. Yeah.
And actually, Marshall Rosenberg didn't like NVC, the word NVC either. I heard a couple of times where in recordings, he basically said he got stuck with it. It's like, I guess he was trying to tie it in with, Gandhi and Martin Luther King. He kind of used it. People kind of associated that term, and then he felt he got stuck with it, basically. So he didn't even really like it, is from the recordings I heard him talking about it.
Okay, so you've heard that even Marshall Rosenberg didn't like the term NVC, and that for him, he wanted to connect it with maybe work like what Gandhi was doing and all of that. And so he wanted to connect it to that, but then he felt like he kind of got stuck with that term when everybody else started using that term, and he was not crazy about that.
Yeah, he wasn't willing to change his strategy. Yeah.
So he wasn't willing to change his strategy.
Right. So, yeah. So my values, I was thinking about sadness, because you had some sadness, and how does that relate to empathy? And for me, the way sadness, it's like we have this feeling of sadness. For me, empathy is the way that we sort of connect in our sadness and our grief, when we're just feeling alone, feeling, just in that pain. It's when we connect with others and hear and are heard by others. That's sort of the healing aspect for grief, is just to be heard and have that sense of connection with others.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you're reflecting on sadness and how empathy can connect with sadness, and you're just thinking about how when people are feeling sad or grief and feeling alone, just being heard empathically can really help in the healing of that. And
this morning, it was like about 4 a.m, my partner was having just really bad stomach pain. I mean, just like, I don't know what it is, but so anyways, it's the same thing, you're like in pain, and just having somebody there that's there to listen, to be with you, it releases that oxytocin, right? The empathic presence releases oxytocin, which is that, the hormone that kind of creates calmness, and, so, and it's healing. So I think that is the empathy, the resonance, the empathic presence and resonance is like this healing, biologically healing quality.
Yeah, so you're reflecting on your partner who is having stomach pain early this morning, and even just, you know, having you there to be with her or be with your partner and listen and empathize. That just helps with the healing process. It brings out the oxytocin and helps people to relax and just feel calmer, and it's healing.
I feel fully heard. I think that was my time too.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so Rachel.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, yeah. So I just want to say that I'm really enjoying our circle so far. It's nice to hear from everybody, and I appreciate everyone's presence.
I'm sensing gratitude from you for the circle and everyone's presence.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree with Edwin. It's amazing just the power of listening, how that can be so healing for people. And you know, there is the release of the oxytocin, and I think there's also just that slowing down. Something about slowing down, and I think that the slowing down and being heard and reflected also helps to, I think there's that physiological aspect, and then also it gives a person, I think, the space to give that empathy to themselves too.
So yeah, what's resonating is the concept of healing that can, well, the healing that can happen because it's a physiological process that is natural, that's happening in our bodies when we are being listened to and empathized with. Yeah, it's really resonating with you. I think that there's power in that.
Yeah, and just thinking about people in conflict too. I mean, you know, I don't know, maybe this is idealistic of me to think this, but I think deep down people do want to connect, even if their defenses are really high and up, and I think that there's something that can create a sense of relief when people can find a true connection and get a sense of, oh, you know, maybe this person does understand me, or maybe I can be heard here. And so I think it just kind of can help break down those walls when the defenses are really high.
Yeah, and particularly when defenses or stakes are high, and there is that real sense of empathy, walls can come down and people can have a sense of safety. You mentioned something before that I think connects, well, it does, and I didn't properly reflect back, but it's this idea that I think when it's being modeled in this kind of format, it makes it, you know, it inspires us within ourselves to really pay attention and hear and empathize with ourselves, is what you said. Yeah, there's power in that.
Yeah. And I have not seen a lot of this kind of work in a more heightened type of situation, but that's something that I'm interested in seeing modeled. Yeah, just because, I mean, it's heartbreaking to see how divisive things are right now between a lot of people, and I believe that can change, but I think there's a long road ahead for that. But I feel like these kinds of conversations, empathic conversations, can be a real tool for that.
Sounds like you have a hopeful realism almost, where you think that the road would be long, but you're believe that we can get there, that we can empathize and maybe lessen the divide.
I think that there's the possibility of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You believe in the possibility of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. Yeah, I think there's always some hope. Yeah, anyway. Just trying to think of what else I have to say about that. Yeah, I think I'm heard and my time is up too. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's about that mark. I've said this before in previous circles, but and it sounds like there is like the science and a process to this, where it's like the third or fourth time that we're given our 5-minute allotment to speak. It's like there's a shift almost. So I'm sensing into that shift. I'm realizing that, you know, I've said it before, like it's almost like strangers becomes friends at this point in time. You know, I've met everyone else a little bit, except just Lou I haven't met, but I feel like we're friends in this short time. I feel a lot of connection with this group.
And who did you want to reflect to?
Sita, sorry. Oh no, sorry, Lou.
Yeah.
Lou, sorry
Okay.
about that.
Sure. So you're reflecting on experiencing this process and recognizing that, around the third or fourth time, things do start to shift a bit, and you were feeling that. And then you were saying how you feel like you're close to the people here, and that we're friends, and you know me the least of everyone in the room, but you're feeling friendly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is this, I know the science that there's oxytocin that's probably been cooking up in all of our systems that's kind of being released now, and I get that, but I also think I don't know, I'm quite a spiritual person, I think, and just this topic of words, I actually think that there's a lot that we don't have words for yet that's happening here. And so I'll use the word magic. I think that there's like magic in this connectivity, and I just want everyone to experience it. That's my hope.
So part of you recognizes appreciates the science, you know, being able to name like oxytocin and what might be happening, but there's another part of you, kind of the spiritual part of you, that just enjoys the mystery and the magic of what happens when people listen to each other and connect like that, and it gives you a lot of hope.
Mystery, that's a really good word. Yeah, and I'm looking out my window, and you know, I see just nature all around me. Canada, we're really lucky that we have a lot of open green space, and it's so natural, right? Like the connections that we have with nature, and it's out there just doing itself, just doing its thing, and it's just so natural that that it's happening and connecting in that way. And big concept came up. So grief is one that I have a lot to say about. I've lost a lot of people very close to me in the last few years, so particularly like this kind of empathy and healing connection really supports with that emotion too. I'll stop there.
Yeah, so you were looking out the window and noticing nature and really appreciating it. And I think maybe both the complexity of it and the naturalness of it, and that idea that something can be complex but completely natural, it just feels right to you. You love, I would say, relaxing into that or something like that. And then grief is something that is important to you, that concept, and maybe I think you said something you've been experiencing or something you want to talk about.
Yeah, it just was Edwin said it, and it just was live for me. But I will say, Lou, you're very exceptional at like attuning. It's like you're reading my mind, and I'm glad you're able to make sense of what I'm saying here, because I'm part of my interest in this kind of training and doing empathy circles. It helps me make sense of really complex topics, and then also ease into, this natural ability that capability that I believe we all have, because it's our birthright. Like, we're just born with this knowing that we need this kind of connection. So sometimes it gets really complex and overwhelming, and then nature, connecting with people in a natural way, it just brings me right back down to earth and grounding, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that you're loving the way that being listened to like this helps you process and helps you understand more clearly things that are complicated. And I think recognizing the difference between like intellectual process and embodied emotional process, and that you love feeling the latter. You appreciate the former, but love feeling the latter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's natural, or it's a natural intelligence that we have.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really natural to go move in and out of that too. So when we're faced with big, complex feelings or situations that cause grief, I think it's like ever more important that we then ground ourselves into these kinds of practices. Again, another thing that Sita said that I really resonate with is this idea of a self-critic. And not holding myself with as much compassion as I feel I hold others. And a real theme is just like through the grief journey, through this self-love journey, I just really keep coming back to the practice. So walking out in nature, talking to people in safe spaces, like it just has helped a lot. Like it's the most profound learning, I think, of my life. So as complex and hard as those big feelings and experiences are, I do think that there's a lot of value that we can extract, and it's really important for our learning.
Yeah, so you're saying that feelings like grief are complex and there's a lot to them, and that doing practices like this, listening to each other and being out in nature, help you work through those and understand them, and that you can relate to what Sita was saying about having like an inner critic inside who talks to you, and you recognize that sometimes you can be more compassionate with others than you are with yourself. I think that's it. Is there more?
And just like it connected, because like the two big concepts, because it just, for me, it all comes back to this practice. Like it's just constant work. And Edwin actually mentioned that in the orientation. Someone did. I thought it was brilliant. It's like akin to physical exercise. Yep.
Right.
But that's good.
And it's all connected, and doing this kind of practice helps you integrate all that complexity, something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. So I will go to, let's see. I'll go to Sita. Actually, Edwin, have you reflected me yet? I don't think you have? Okay. All right. I'll go to Sita then. Well, this is a rich conversation. I don't know where to go next. So I guess what's up for me strongly is inner parts. So one of the things I teach in the leadership training I do is a model of our inside that has an inner critic and an inner child and an inner compassionate voice, and a scared voice. So there's a scared child and a happy child or free child, and becoming aware of all those voices and who's driving the bus most of the time, and And I think that's a fabulous tool. It's a really powerful tool for recognizing what's going on inside. I'll stop there.
Okay, so you're talking about the leadership training that you're doing, and you work a lot with the inner parts, the inner critic, the scared child, the happy child, and there was one more part that you mentioned that I don't remember. Compassionate part, yes, and being aware of who's in the driver's seat at different times, which part, and that your experiences, your awareness of those parts, and when they are active, is very helpful.
Yeah, thanks. And actually, there is a fifth part, which is the adult observer part that can take a step back and be aware that I actually have different voices and which one's speaking, and making a decision about who do I want to listen to in this moment.
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
Okay, so you mentioned that there's also that fifth part, the adult part, who is aware of the other parts and can make decisions about which part they want to be speaking or in charge in the moment.
Yeah, and I think of self-empathy as a process of recognizing that those different parts exist and listening to them with compassion and comforting, like the scared child, rather than letting them drive the bus, comforting them, and and helping them recognize that they don't have to. They're just a kid. They don't have to try to solve the adult problems and the big world problems.
Yeah, yeah. So you're talking about how, like for example, the compassionate part can comfort the scared child part, and you can bring awareness to these parts when they're activated. And for example, a scared child doesn't need to be in charge. That they can actually sit back and be comforted, and it's very helpful to bring awareness to that.
Yeah, thank you. And it's in the years of training, leadership training that I've run, one of the things that's interesting to see is a pattern of how, kind of like Rachel said, people tend to have more compassion for others than they do for themselves. Yeah, so they have that compassionate part turned outward, usually towards, a dog or a niece or a cousin, or maybe elderly, someone that they love, like a grandparent or something like that. But it's more difficult for people to have that for themselves.
Yeah, so you've noticed that in the work that you have done, what Rachel said was resonated with you, because you've noticed that people often have a much harder time giving that compassion to themselves. It's a lot easier for them to give that to, say, a family member or a dog, an animal, than it is to give to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just giving compassion to myself right now so sometimes when I think about how big the world is and how much pain there is in the world and how much compassion is needed in the world, I feel overwhelmed, and it's like throwing a drop in the ocean. and so I'm just giving myself some compassion for I am enough, and what I'm doing is enough, even though it's not everything that's needed.
Yeah. So you were giving yourself a moment to give yourself some compassion. When you look out into the world, you see that there's just a lot of pain out there, and it can feel overwhelming to you. And I sense that sometimes you wonder if you're doing enough, and so you want to give yourself some compassion for, I am enough, you are enough, and just let yourself know that.
Thank you for hearing me so fully. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, Edwin.
Listening.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really appreciated Lou's sharing, and after Rachel had spoken, I felt motivated to share about the focusing that I have done, and I know, Edwin, that you're, it sounds like you have done focusing before. You've spoken about that. And I'm assuming that, Lou, you're familiar with focusing, but I just wanted to check in with Rachel if you're familiar with focusing. It's, I'll
I
just
love
say
to hear it in your words. I have my own version of what I think you mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it's another kind of inner systems work where a speaker shares what they're experiencing and somebody reflects back, but the process is very much internal. And so, I was reflecting on that as self-empathy, and I'll stop there for the moment.
Okay, so you're wanting to talk about focusing, which you see as a form of self-empathy, and you're curious if everyone was familiar with it, or kind of trying to gauge how familiar everyone was with it, because you're sounds like you want to kind of explore that topic.
Yeah. And it's been fascinating to me to do focusing because, it's basically a way of getting in touch with the different parts. And my experience of doing focusing has been that oftentimes I'll be surprised at what the different parts have to say.
Yeah, so the focusing is about hearing those different parts of yourself, and there's a surprise that comes up. You feel surprised, like what those parts have to say.
And in terms of reflecting on the inner critic, I've had experiences where I have a very strong felt sense there's a part inside that says, there's absolutely nothing to be critical of, and that is not the truth, and it's really nice to feel that in that embodied sense. And so it just made me think about experiences of that kind when we were talking about judgment and the critic.
So talking about judgment and the critic, you're thinking about your experience with focusing, that you have a judgment, but a voice of judgment, but there's another voice that you have, which is there's no need to judge and be judgmental.
And when I've had that experience, it's just a very deep felt sense of, that's just purely a mental concept. Whereas that inner knowing is that there's no need for that kind of judgment. Not that there's not a need for, or there's not an importance of being discerning, but I think that critic and discernment are two different things.
So it's like with the focusing, you get like a deep experience of that there's no need to judge, and so it's like a deep visceral quality that you sense into.
Yeah. And so I remember the first time I felt that, and just feeling surprised, not that I guess the surprise was more of how visceral that feeling was, as opposed, because I think it can be very easy to get caught in whatever emotion it is that we're feeling. And there's also the ability to take space from it. And but it was quite a gift to have that very strong visceral sense of, there's no need for that.
Yeah, so you can sort of maybe tell yourself there's no need for that, but you had like a deep visceral sense, sort of a bodily knowing that was sort of true. And it sounds like you really appreciate that depth of that experience.
Yeah. So I think that that the focusing practice is really valuable, as a way of getting in contact with these different parts of us, and it's incredible how much wisdom I think that the body has.
Yes, you have a real appreciation for the focusing process, connecting to that bodily wisdom and sort of really valuing that bodily wisdom.
Yeah. I think that's basically what I have to say. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll speak to
So,
Lou. Oh,
yeah, I just want to do a time check. So we have 10 minutes before we're supposed to go back into the main room, and wanted to have a little time for us to reflect on what we've been doing here before we do that. So, Edwin, would you be okay with us stopping now, or do you really want to take another turn?
I have tons to say.
Yeah. So I feel bad doing that.
Hold me back here. Tie me up.
Yeah. So how was this for everyone?
Yeah, you guys are pros. I can tell that you've been at this for a long time. It's beautiful, actually, to be a witness to, the way that you conduct empathic and dialogue. I think, it's. I'm happy to be learning from you, truly. Mm-hmm.
And sorry, Sita, do you want to say something?
Well, I was just basically going to say similar. I really appreciate being here and learning from you both, and learning from all of us. Really. Yeah. So thank you for making this happen.
Thanks. So do either of you have any questions about the process or things that I did as a facilitator, or which wasn't much? I didn't intervene much. Like I never even asked someone to pause. Which, usually as a facilitator, if you're in a circle with people that are new to this, even though like in your explanation, you say, after you get out a couple of ideas, pause so the reflector can reflect back. People will not do that because it's not what people do in normal conversation. And it's very odd to say, so even though people have permission to do it, usually as a facilitator, you have to intervene at least 2 or 3 times before people get the idea that, yes, it's okay to actually interrupt someone, stop someone. So I really had to do very little as a facilitator. But I'm curious if you have any questions about facilitation.
Well, I mean, one thing that I'm curious about is like, for example, as somebody during reflection, I was aware that there were some times when I feel like I got it, and other times where I felt like I missed some things, and I'm curious how much the facilitator comments on that. I mean, I don't think that there was anything egregious by any means, but yeah, just curious about that.
So I'm guided by 2 things in making a judgment about whether to intervene or not. One is, does the speaker seem genuinely satisfied with the reflection, even if in my judgment they missed something, and maybe they did actually miss something. If the speaker says, yeah, and they look like they feel heard, and I think it's genuine, then I'll let it go. It's like, because the other side is, the more you intervene and correct people, the more you activate people's critics, and they start to feel like, I can't do this, or they think someone's judging them all the time. So you want to intervene as little as possible in that way. But if you see that the speaker is really dissatisfied, then you want to do something about that. And the other case is where your judgment is that the speaker is saying that they're satisfied and they have a smile on their face, but you think they're being polite.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a judgment call.
Right. So would you re-clarify with the speaker then, or how would you handle that?
What I would do is I'd say, so I also heard this and this and this. Is that right? And then the person says, yeah. And then I just let it go on.
Okay.
or if the speaker expresses actually dissatisfaction or correction, like they're correcting the listener. So I would let that happen once, see how the listener responds to it. If the response to it by missing it again, then I would say, well, let me say what I'm hearing. I'm hearing this and this and this. Is that right? Yes, that's right. Okay. So, listener, do you hear the difference there? You hear what's there? Yes. And then you let them go again.
Okay.
Something like that.
Great.
I have a couple of questions, about just general questions. It didn't really come up in our circle per se. But one is movement. I actually did get up. You might have noticed I got up just to like stretch my legs, and it's come up before. And there was one circle I was in where I just felt like I needed to actually like embody my excitement. So I actually told the group, oh, that feels good to I'm just going to get up. And I got up out of my seat, and I teach yoga as well. So like I'm just more comfortable, I guess, expressing in that physical way. And I've been thinking about kind of how I would introduce the circle. I think I might outright say that in the intro, to say like, if anyone feels the need to get up, move about the room. And I was just wondering what you thought about that. Like, is that okay? Does that mess up anything in the process, or what is your take?
Actually, I love that. And it's not something that I think about, which is odd because I'm a kinetic person. I've been an athlete most of my life. So, but I don't think about that much. And I think you're exactly right, that it would be good to say that. I do think there is an element of distraction that can happen. So if you're saying the speaker wants to get up and move and express themselves, yes. If others are doing that while the speaker is speaking, that could be distracting. So I would say, if you need to do that, you turn your camera off so that it's not distracting. And if somebody starts doing that without turning their camera off and it appears to be distracting people, then I would say, could you please turn your camera off? It's a little distracting.
Has that happened where you've had to ask someone to turn off the camera? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are people who either don't turn their mic or don't turn their camera, like they're talking to someone else and they're, or they get up to do whatever and they don't turn their camera off. It's like kind of like, well, it's sort of like if you were sitting in a circle and people started doing it, someone takes out a book and starts reading, or that's a little extreme, but
I had
it's different when we're behind our screens. Sorry, it's just like it's different. Go ahead. Sorry.
I had someone that I was actually holding up signs. He was a sign maker, and he was like holding up signs in the background. And I didn't make any point of it, but when it became my turn, I just spoke to him and said, hey, that's pretty annoying. And he kind of reflected back. So I didn't like correct him, but then just brought it up which I try to do is do as little correcting, like Lou was saying about, feels maybe judgmental, but do it within the circle itself, within the process. And then he reflected back. So we're staying within the process, and he actually stopped doing it. So
you're saying he was holding up signs related to what was happening in the circle, or something
just different.
outside?
He was a sign maker for Extinction Rebellion. He had all these signs, and he just thought it was
he was
fun
holding them up as comments.
It's just while other people are talking, he's like holding up these signs because he was very nervous. So it was like he had to be always kind of going, and it just, and he was just, he was used to sort of being in charge and having control. It was sort of a control sort of a thing.
A quirk.
I wouldn't let him do that. If I was facilitating that circle, I would ask him to stop, because it has to do with, when someone is speaking, everyone in the circle listens to the speaker, but one person reflects the speaker. So if somebody's busy doing other things like holding up signs or writing or something, then they're not really listening to the speaker, or there's a potential they're distracting others. And so I would say something about that. And I think this is also one of the things that I feel is that when you're doing a process, you're holding a process as a facilitator, and you say, these are the how the process works, and this is what we're going to be doing, and then you don't hold people to that, it creates a lack of safety in the group. Holding the structure provides safety for people. And so I think it's important to do that, not just let stuff go.
I could see that. I've spent, you know, part of that this is like limited by an hour and a half, 2 hours for a circle. I spend a lot of time in sort of like other classes and groups that I work with in like building those norms together as a group. So I hear it's a balance that I'm going to have to work out, I think, is like how much time can I check in with people and say, hey, is movement okay with the group? And versus like intuiting and feeling that out. And yeah, I had another question about reflection and paraphrasing, and maybe I'll save that for the greater group, but.
Okay, thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, you.
Rita.
Are we all back yet?
Yeah, I think we're all here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to welcome you all back. I hope you got as much from the circle this afternoon, this evening, or this morning as I did. Now we're each going to take a minute to discuss about the insights that we gained in our circle that we did this time. I will call upon each one of you, and how did your values relate to the Empathy Circle culture of empathy? So yes, I'll call upon you to move it along faster. So I think we've got 25 minutes left. So Sita, you've got 60 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, I really enjoyed our circle, and one of the things that was interesting for me was hearing a story about Edwin shared a story about a small group of young Republicans that he was speaking with, and wanting to understand what their values were. And one of the strong values that came up was the value of protection. And so he talked about wanting to see what the connection between empathy and protection was. And then he thought, oh, well, if people feel like they are empathized with, they won't feel like they need to protect against others hurting them. And so he shared that with that group. And suddenly they had a place where they could connect and empathize with each other. And then the discussion could continue on to how can we build more empathy in the world. So I really enjoyed hearing that story.
Thank you, Sita. Erin.
Hi. So I had a great experience talking about values. Felt like some of the kind of key concepts that I'm trying to move forward and like make available to people in my practice and really in the world are just like kind of reverberating in the conversations, and just enjoy being heard, and had a really great experience today. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Sunita.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our circle, and I just saw how we all had one value, but then it all related. It was one. We all came back to one point of connection and authenticity and compassion for oneself. And if you are compassionate, if you are authentic, if you are true to yourself, that's what you reflect and that's what you get. And that unfolding was really beautiful. And I think that's the beauty of this empathy circle. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunita. Malin.
Yeah, the values that we were talking about really turned out to be very similar, and I had a personal experience with connection with myself, others, and nature, which is becoming even more important to me now, being an environmental, climate, animal rights activist. And I learned about this from the Balinese tradition, Trihiti Karana, which is connection with myself, others, and nature. And it's all like, it just sort of like, it's all connected. So it was quite emotional for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Malin. Graham.
Thank you, Dean. One of the things that happens with me is that I get a little bit overwhelmed. I get anxious and overwhelmed. And so that was an experience that I had to deal with and try to calm myself down. And I felt safe in our little group. We talked about, we settled on integrity and judgment. And we played around with those themes. And it was certainly productive for me. And I sense the others were stimulated by the topic as well. And I thank you very much for the experience today. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Shema.
I really enjoyed our group and the group members. I really benefited from each person's perspectives. And I think our group members had a lot of courage because they all shared of themselves from their personal lives. And I really appreciated that. And I really enjoyed the philosophical discussions we had about integrity and how integrity can be different for different people because we have different values. I thought that was really interesting.
Thank you, Shama. Boris.
So I've had a wonderful time with our group, and I think we've been circling around topics of curiosity and authenticity. So I really, yeah, it has given me a lot of hope about about the connections we make with other people, and about, yeah, basically just about the future. And I don't know. Yeah, I'm just feel very grateful for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Boris. Lynette.
Hi, yes, thank you. I really enjoyed our group, and it made me even more curious. And that was one of our topics, was curiosity, but it made me even more curious as to wanting to get to know each of these people that I spent time with and going deeper with them, and to understanding where they're coming from, what they're doing. Yeah, it was a whole can of worms that opened up in there for me. So it was a really good experience. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. Celine.
Well, I enjoyed the interplay between personal stories and then sharing about values and how they interrelate and function in ourselves and in our relationships.
Thank you, Celine. Rachel.
I almost am sensing, like, it feels to me that we were actually all in one big empathy circle. Almost like somehow we were having the same conversations. I don't know, different breakout room. It just, the moral of the story for me is, like, we are more alike than we are different. And just this platform is so beautiful in the way that it can really make that real in a quick amount of time. Excited to continue and get to know everybody, yeah, in depth.
Thank you, Rachel. Ben.
Thanks. Wanted to, I think somebody said unfolding and somebody said stimulation. I think I noticed those in our circle as well. And kind of just kind of playing with these kind of values and noticing how we hold them, and also even in an hour, how they hold us, and how they begin to transform, and the service and hope and nourishment beginning to become sensible, you know, in the circle. Yeah, it was a wonderful hour for me. Yeah, thanks.
Oh. Sorry about that. My internet is unstable at the moment. Thank you, Ben. Anne.
Yeah, we had a lovely circle, I think. It was great. Lynette started off with authenticity straight away. And I think that helped us kind of dive quite deeply. And we were just, it felt like we were living it. We were living the curiosity and the openness and the honesty and the connections. And it was some beautiful circling going on. And I look forward to getting to know that little group we were in more, as well as the rest of you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Anne. Bill.
Yeah, I was really appreciative of the people in the group and how they were really courageous and being authentic. And one of the things that I really like about this is that we're creating a little mini culture of empathy. And it seems daunting when you say 8 billion people, but it starts somewhere. And among 4 people, among 16 people, there was a culture of empathy created for a little while. And that's a nice contrast to a lot of the other things that are going on today. So thank you all. Thanks for coming here and being part of this.
Thank you, Bill. Lou.
I'm feeling touched by what Bill said because I agree completely. And it's so nice to name that. Thanks for naming that, Bill. I was in circle with Sita and Rachel and Edwin and loved getting to know Sita and Rachel. I know Edwin a lot. And I think what I'm taking away is a feeling of joy around focusing on values and the process of recognizing what's important to me, because that is what my values are, is what's important to me, and then being able to name those, like giving words to what is important to me. And that just feels really satisfying to do that and connecting with others around that.
Thank you, Lou. Edwin?
Yeah, I really enjoyed our circle as well. Just the connection that happened. And for me, one of my values was creativity. And so the relationship to empathy that I see is that when we hear each other and empathize with each other, it's like these different sort of worlds come together and that new ideas sort of merge out of that. New ideas or new feelings, new kind of insights. And so I think that empathy can lead to that creativity, especially if it's big conflicts. Bring people together who are in big conflicts, then you got a lot of energy, bring them together, and creativity can really happen out of that. So I think empathy is a gateway to creativity and innovation for that matter.
So what I came away from my circle today was an immense feeling of love and an immense feeling of trust with each other. And yet again, many people have already said what I would like to have said, but I'm going to say some of those things again. How much we share with each other and how these very small differences are used to divide us is our biggest problem that we need to overcome. And we do this by listening to each other. And this tool that we're learning and that we're going to be hopefully teaching others is a wonderful mechanism for developing that tool, developing that empathy muscle, that listening muscle, listening in silence and actually hearing and then validating that hearing by actually expressing that you actually heard someone else. I mean, that's very powerful. It was very tiring when I first came to this process and I used to leave the circles exhausted. Now I don't feel that I'm tired. I'm charged with so much energy and the joy of realizing that, hey, we are going to change things. We are changing things as we do it now. We are living the change. We are the change, and we're going to take this change out to others. In closing, I'd like to pass to Edwin. Thank you.
Okay, great. We're moving along faster than was anticipated, but so I have a few extra minutes. Next, I'll be sending out an email with assignments for the next week, and I'm going to go through some of those of what they are. The first one is there's going to be a feedback form to fill out about this session. So there'll be a link. You go in there, you can just comment, get any questions, comments, insights you have, so we can keep developing the session. There's going to be a list of everyone and empathy buddy calls, which is you're going to be paired up with someone, and your task between now and the next session is to connect with each other and do a half an hour, at least half an hour. If you want to do more, that's great. But where one person will be a speaker, and you'll get 15 minutes to speak, about how the course is, what's alive with you with what we're doing, or it can be just about anything. And the listener will just do empathic listening for 15 minutes, and then you'll switch, and then you'll get, you'll just take different roles. And this is part of a bigger part of what was one of the objectives that Bill talked about, is to get everyone connected in the group here to get to know each other, and that we have sort of a community of practice, a community where you can sort of reach out to each other to have mutual support with facilitation. Because when you're facilitating, it's really, sometimes especially if you're doing like conflict facilitation, it's good to have a pre-circle with a fellow facilitator, just to be heard before you go into a difficult situation, and afterwards as well. So Lou, Bill and I, we would take this empathy tent out. We're going to political, really charged environments, political left, right battles, street battles. We're offering empathic listening, to people, trying to bring them together. So before we start, we just hear each other out, and that really helps us connect, reduce tension and stress, and find out where everyone else in the group is. So there'll be a link to kind of an outline of some of the ways that we're going to be building that community of practice. So between each session, you'll have a different person. I think Lynette said, "Oh, I'd really like to be able to connect with people," right? I think you said, "Well, this is your opportunity. We got it all set up for you." So you'll be doing that in, between each one, so that 5 times, you'll have 5 different people to connect with, and then you just email each other and try to work out a time. If it doesn't work, that's okay. Sometimes you got schedules and you just can't work it in. If not this time, then next time. And then we'll also, what's the other thing is another task is try to facilitate an empathy circle with family or friends between now and next time. And then when you come back, the first thing we'll do is just report back. You'll have a minute to report back. How was your empathy buddy call? Are there any questions you have? And how did your empathy circle go? It's sort of optional. You try to do it. If it doesn't work, then that's okay as well. So and you'll be getting an email with those instructions for all of that. So I think that's the things I had here. So back to you, Lou or Bill.
Yeah, it might just be, you want to do, Bill? I was thinking it'd be good to do an overview of what's happening in the next session, just so people are prepared for that.
Go ahead, Lou.
Okay, so in next time we're together, you will have an opportunity to practice an empathy circle introduction with each other, and then you'll also have practice facilitating an empathy circle. So when we do the breakouts next time, each of the people in the breakout room will take a turn facilitating for a portion of the time. So those are the main activities of when we're together next time.
Yeah, and I would just like to say, when I get confused and there's a lot of new things, mechanical things, techniques thrown at you, I ask myself the question in a circle: what needs to happen for everyone to feel heard in this circle? And if I can answer that question, whatever it is, that's usually good. And then as for the culture of empathy, I ask you to think of, we live in a culture of empathy. It's imaginary. We're living in a culture of empathy. Everybody's feeling that. How is that different from right now? Do you worry about people, attacking you when you go out in the street? Or like one of the things that I had is that people would be designated listeners. So if you're going, you're having a hard day, you see somebody with a shirt and you go, hey, would you listen to me for a minute? And then somebody would listen to you, and you'd feel that there are people there to listen to you. So that's just one of my things. And I'll leave you with that. Anybody else?
Celine had something.
I felt really touched hearing you, Edwin, tell us about that you're arranging for us to be able to connect with someone and know each other more. And I'm touched at all the different ways you all are creating learning opportunities and connection opportunities, above and beyond what would otherwise be considered necessary. So a lot of gratitude. One of the qualities that I've enjoyed in this is your generosity. It's very moving for me. It softens my heart and opens me up. So thank you.
Thank you.
Edwin feels like a twinkle fingers moment.
Yeah, this is our group portrait. We got to get everybody hold those twinkle fingers, make it really, and like Sunita, get really close to the camera so we can see you. We want full pictures. So this will be our group profile. That's great. Okay, thank you. Thanks for the reminder, Bill.
Sure. Okay.
So thank you, everyone. Have a good week.
And we'll see you next week.
Oh, wait. Graham has a question. What is it, Graham? No?
You're muted, Graham.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just waving, baby.
Oh, okay. All right.
Anyway,
sorry.
See you next
week.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. See you next week.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye.
All righty, stop the recording.